not about PFAS, but about presenting,
Yes.
is you can see on the screen up there what the camera is taking a picture of.
Yeah.
So if you step outside it,
I'm going to sit.
okay.
the whole time.
No, when we have the presenter doing the presentation on law and burial, I mean, he was standing over here the whole time. Nobody can see it. It's a disembodied voice.
Disembodied. I hate when that happens.
Sure sounds good right then, yeah.
We're gonna be the hit all the time. You know, question morning about.
Well, I will just duck in to thank Rod for doing this very, very, very timely conversation. Those of you who were at the first service noticed that, or knew that I did this. Maybe you read the paper, this morning's paper, but on two different sections in this morning's paper, the topic that he's going to be addressing appeared. So this is timely, timely, timely. And so I'm grateful. Rod, take it away.
All right. I appreciate the newspapers giving me the intro for the topic here this morning. So we're going to talk about PFAS, what it is and why do we care. So just a little bit of introduction on myself. I'm an environmental engineer, been doing in the business for 47 years. Have a bachelor's in civil engineering and a master's in sanitary engineering, which is now called environmental engineering. Sounds better than sanitary engineering, from Georgia Tech. I've got professional engineering licenses in New York and Georgia and Florida. I've shut a few of them down that I've had just as I'm kind of pulling in my workload here. I design and build water treatment and wastewater treatment plants basically across the United States, from Boston down to Miami to Los Angeles. And actually started working in Colorado back in '79, working for Coors, doing some of their wastewater treatment. I work for a national environmental engineering firm. I've been working for them a little over 40 years. And I'm currently working on the largest PFAS treatment facility in the United States in Anaheim, California. That one is being built for 73 million gallons a day, treating well water. And then also working with South Adams County, just getting started on a project there, treating 22 million gallons a day for PFAS removal. And until I read this, I forgot my company was working on the Brighton treatment facility, which I'm not working on that one, others are working on that one. So a big caveat is I'm not a PFAS expert. We've got a lot of PhDs in the company that do that. I'm a project manager and a project executive that helps facilitate getting these projects built. So you're welcome to ask questions as I go. If something comes up, just raise your hand and we'll take the questions as we go along. Yes?
Are you a rambling wreck?
I'm a rambling wreck and a hell of an engineer.
There you go. And you drink a whiskey clear.
Yeah. So next slide. Yep. Okay. So these per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS, as an industry, we've kind of landed on calling it PFAS. Is it plural or singular? What are PFAS? Sounds kind of awkward, but it's a plural term. And it includes about more than 9,000 chemicals. And the real key is the carbon and the fluorine bond. And if you look at the little picture up there, the black balls represent carbon, so it's 8 carbons connected, and then the little color out there, green balls are fluorine or fluoride, and it's that fluoride carbon bond that they discovered back in the 40s. And that is the strongest bond known to man, chemical bond. It's a very strong bond, and once you make it, it's very hard to destroy. And it's in thousands of products. And when it was discovered, I mean, wow, this is some really cool stuff. It does great things. We're just discovering now there's a downside to that. And some of its features is it repels water and repels oil and grease. And two of the substances, PFOA and PFAS, are two of the earlier ones that have done a lot of research on. So the next slide. As I mentioned, that strong chemical bond, it's very heat resistant, so it makes it a really good firefighting. And you know, we're now trying to figure out how to destroy it, and it's just taking super hot temperatures to destroy it. And as I mentioned earlier, it repels water and repels fat. In the industry, it's really known as the C8. You know, it's that 8 carbon molecule. Next slide. So it's in a lot of products today. The fast food packaging, you know, your pizza box, when you used to get it and you'd put it in your lap driving home, your lap would be full of grease when you got home. That doesn't happen anymore because that pizza box now is coated in PFAS, keeps the grease from soaking through the box. Popcorn bags are all coated with PFAS. And then the wonderful Teflon is PFAS, those nonstick. And firefighting foam, so all the military bases and airports, all that have the fire foam, and have used it and sprayed it, and so it's gotten on the ground, it gets into the groundwater, and that's probably one of the biggest sources of where groundwater pollution is coming from, is the firefighting foams. And then it's water and stain resistant, so you know your Gore-Tex raincoats are coated in PFAS. There's a lot of pressure on Gore-Tex and other companies to come up with another material to coat the raincoats. And your Stainmaster carpets, you know, that's all PFAS coated carpets. So, and then just personal care products, and a lot of personal care products and herbicides and pesticides. And it's also used in mining and fracking and that whole industry. And due to it getting into our water supply and animals eating it, then now it's in our water supplies and in our food. And next slide. So what does it matter? Well, it does bioaccumulate in our blood, in organs, muscle tissue. The body, it's really far into the body. The body doesn't know what to do with it. It just bioaccumulates. And now many studies are showing PFOA and PFAS cause cancer, have weight effects, developmental effects, reproductive effects, immune effects. So a lot of impacts there. And as I mentioned, it doesn't degrade very easily and referred to as forever chemicals. And studies by the International Journal of Environmental and Public Health and CDC both identified that about 97% of us in the United States have it in our blood. So most of us have it in our blood. And it's not just a United States problem, it's a worldwide problem. It's all over the world. Next slide. So my apologies for this being fuzzy. This is just a snapshot of an interactive map on the EPA website. So the light blue dots are water treatment plants that have been tested that are above the current new limits. The dark blue are where they tested and it's below the limits. And then purple are military bases, which is a source of a lot of the PFAS. And then the red are just some other contaminated sites.
Right, when you talk about the limits, you're talking about 4 parts per trillion, right, the new standard?
Yep.
Not 70 parts.
That's correct. And I'll be touching on that, but yeah, it's currently at 4 parts per trillion.
David, right?
Yep.
Colorado, pretty heavy concentration, looks like, I mean, from your map.
Yeah.
Is that true? That it looks like there's a lot of activity or?
Yep, Colorado is one of the states that have a lot of the contamination. A lot because of our military bases and airports. And we're working on just trying to figure out where it is coming from, the sources. That we'll touch on in a minute, but one of the refineries here is discharging a lot of PFAS into the rivers here.
Because they do fire training as well.
Okay. So in 1947, 3M is credited with discovering the PFOA, coming up with this wonderful, creative chemical that had many uses. DuPont started purchasing that from them in *51 to make their Teflon. And through some lawsuits, which I'll talk about in a minute, there are a lot of internal documents that now are available. So in *61, DuPont did an internal study on Teflon, and internally recommending that the PFOA be handled with extreme care, and contact with the skin should be strictly avoided. That was an internal document. And then in 1970, another internal study by DuPont found that the C8 molecule was highly toxic when inhaled and moderately toxic when ingested. And they discovered that it was bioaccumulating in their employees. And that also happened to be the same year that EPA was formed in 1970. And Nadine reminded me that Earth Day started in 1970 also jointly there. EPA did not know about any of the dangers of PFAS at the time. And so there were no regulations around PFAS. However, under the Toxic Substance Control Act, manufacturers of chemicals that had evidence of substantial risk to human health and environment were required to report that to the EPA. But that didn't happen.
But Rob, we talk about this like internally. I assume, I know a lot, I produce a lot of chemicals, plastics. I work for companies that did it.
Yep.
And a lot of them, the resin is typically a powder or dust, right? So was it from, if I'm working in a manufacturing facility, I'm concerned about handling it, I said.
Yep.
Versus it being on a Teflon frying pan and stable. So there's probably a difference of what the characteristics were that they're talking about.
You bet.
When did these internal studies become public?
Good question, and I'm coming to that. I'm going to cover one more slide on history, and then we're going to talk about litigation. So in '81, 3M, was doing tests and discovering that the PFOA would cause birth defects in rats. And in '84, DuPont discovered it in the water supplies around West Virginia and Ohio, where they had their facility. And so they were doing all kinds of testing quietly. I mean, they were keeping it all internal. And then in the '90s, there was two internal company cancer studies that were showing cancer caused in liver cancer, pancreatic, testicular cancer. So in 1998, Wilbur Tennant had a cow farm right next to a landfill that DuPont owned, where they were putting the residue from PFOA into a landfill, and that landfill was leaking out leachate into a creek that was running through his farm, and about half of his cows died, stillborns, birth defects, tumors, so anyway, and at that time there were no regulations on PFAS. EPA, nobody knew that there were really any health effects associated with that. So next slide. So the litigation in 1999, Robert Billett was contacted by the farmer and got him to represent him in a lawsuit against DuPont. That was settled out of court for an undisclosed amount of money in 2001, but during the legal discovery process, he found that the manufacturer knew the dangers of PFOA and didn't disclose those to EPA or his workers or the public that was surrounding them of the risk. So as a side note, I was at a conference last week up in Cincinnati where we were discussing a lot about PFAS, and Robert Billett was our featured speaker at the conference. So got some time to spend some one-on-one time with him also. So that was, and I'll tell you more about that a little bit later. So continuing the litigation in 2004, EPA sued DuPont for not disclosing all this information. So as part of that lawsuit, the company agreed to phase out PFOA by 2015. So they basically gave themselves 10 years to phase out PFOA. In the meantime, then they started developing alternative chemicals. One was Gen X, which was, they took that, rather than the C8 molecule, started creating a C6 molecule that had a lot of the same positive traits that they were using. And more to come on that. So next slide. So continuing the litigation in 2007, 3M also paid a penalty for never telling the EPA that the information they had on PFAS. And as part of Robert Billett's another lawsuit, DuPont settled a class action lawsuit of all the people that lived around the facility that had been drinking the contaminated water. So it was $3 million in the suit, plus another $235 million to help set up a medical panel to monitor the effects, and concluded that there were 70,000 people that were affected, and so they were paying their medical bills from that lawsuit. And then in 2016, which Kirk was mentioning, EPA announced the first provisional advisory of PFOA and PFAS at 70 parts per trillion. And you know, industry was arguing that was too low, and health folks were arguing it's too high. So as of today, DuPont and a couple of their spin-off corporations and 3M have paid $12 billion for the PFAS. The expectation is that we're looking at something that's probably going to be bigger and greater than the 2006 billion that the tobacco companies paid out in the 1990s. And the comment that Robert Billett made was, you know, in the tobacco industry, people made a conscious decision to smoke. Here with PFAS, nobody made a conscious decision. Everybody is just a innocent bystander that's getting it. So this could end up being a really big deal when it's all said and done. And as I mentioned, 10 days ago, EPA came out with their national standards. And if we go to the next slide, what those national standards look like. The middle column there is goals. Those aren't enforceable, those are goals. And then the column on the right there is the actual standards that have to be met. So for PFOA, it's 4 parts per trillion. For PFAS, 4 parts. And then some other derivatives of PFAS there at 10 parts. But one in particular, the Gen X there, is at 10 parts. That's what they came up with to replace, and now they find, you know, surprise, the 6th carbon molecule also has detrimental effects. So as part of this, all public drinking water systems are required to start testing for PFAS to see what the levels are. If they detect PFAS above the limits, then they've got 5 years to build new facilities and get it down below the 4 parts per trillion. EPA's estimate is that about 6 to 10% of the 66,000 public water systems in the US will find that they're above the limit. So about 6,000 water treatment plants are going to need to get upgraded.
You're working for a long time.
I've got job security.
Question, what about these cooking sprays? If we're trying to get away from non-stick cookware, do we have?
I don't know whether, like Pam,
Yeah.
whether they, what they have in there. So it's worth, I guess, trying to read the label and see what's in there.
Yeah.
Good.
Ron,
Yep.
question, are you surprised at the 6 to 10% number?
Yeah.
That seems low.
Low, yeah. I mean, when you look back at that map, I mean, there's a lot of places in the United States that, that aren't near military bases and airports, and so, their water supplies just haven't been contaminated.
There are only 2 dots in Miami.
Yeah.
Probably only two.
Is there only 2 people in there?
So just to give you some perspective on 1 part per trillion, to put it in respect of time, that would be 1 second out of 32,000 years would be 1 part out of a trillion. Or as far as distance, the 93 million miles to the sun, that would be 6 inches out of that 93 million miles is 1 part per trillion. So it's a very small number. The detection limit for PFAS is around 2 parts per trillion, and it varies a little bit depending on this particular species, but kind of that's the accepted typical number is about 2. So we set the limit at 4. The non-detect is at 2. So if it's 1.9, it's just going to show up typically as like 0. I mean, it's something below the detection limit. And just kind of as a separate note, back in the 80s, DuPont scientists internally had set 1,000 parts per trillion as the limit for drinking water. I mean, they didn't talk about it, but that was internally. That also happened to be the detection limit at that time. So it was basically, they set it at, if you could detect it, you're in trouble. But the detection limit has continued to, the science of being able to measure it has gotten better and better with many chemicals over the years. So we get better and better able to measure something. And typically on a lot of chemicals, the limits keep going down as we're able to better detect. And with many chemicals, to divert again, is the thinking in the medical community is a lot of times for a chemical, there's a threshold limit. That if it's below this limit, we don't think it's going to have a major impact on our bodies, but above that, so there are limits that are set on various chemicals with that concept. So how do you treat, if we can go to the next slide, how do you treat PFAS? There's 3 kind of commercially available that are being used. There's an ion exchange media, which is a media that absorbs the PFAS onto the media, and then when it gets saturated, unfortunately, the only thing you can do with the media is you take it out and you put it in the landfill. So and then potentially that can leach out. So, but it has to go into a specially designed landfill that's got a liner that hopefully protects that from happening.
What's the liner made of though?
Yeah.
Everything's.
Well, okay, here's a real irony for you is the ion exchange media we buy from the chemical companies that made the PFAS.
Living through chemistry, that's what.
Yeah. And so the other is activated carbon, and it also absorbs the PFAS, and when it gets saturated, Typically, it goes to the landfill. There is some activated carbon they're experimenting now where you regenerate it and reuse it. So that's maybe a little bit more reusable.
But anytime you do that, you're expelling.
You
gotta capture it.
Exactly. So it's yeah. It doesn't go away. And then reverse osmosis is really a membrane, and you're basically filtering it out. But the downside to reverse osmosis, you're filtering it out, you're creating a concentrate. Now you've got a real concentrate stream of PFAS. What do you do with that? And when I do like seawater with reverse osmosis and you remove the salt, the technology now, or the practice now is you put the salt back in the ocean, I mean, and it's a minuscule amount of salt, so, but you don't want to put the PFAS back in the ocean, so. So the pictures there, the upper right is in Anaheim, is a facility that I'm working on, and that's 20 vessels there that have ion exchange media. And then a smaller site at Anaheim in the bottom right is 6 vessels. So these are basically at well sites where you're treating the groundwater, where originally they had wells and you were just adding chlorine and putting it right into the distribution system. Now we've inserted this treatment process to remove the PFAS and put it back in. But they had about 20-something wells they had to shut down when they detected PFAS in the groundwater.
So because you can't get rid of it, you can't regenerate it like you can a water softener in your house.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about, capital cost is X, there's still the operating cost of capital.
You bet. We for Anaheim, we estimated the activated carbon was going to need to be replaced about every 6 months. And the ion exchange media, it looked like would last like 12 months. So even though it was a little bit more expensive than the activated carbon, when you look at the life cycle cost, we recommended ion exchange media for Anaheim to use there. And then on the bottom left is just a picture I grabbed offline of some reverse osmosis units to treat large flows. You're talking about huge, thousands of those circular pipes there that you see that are the RO units. Yep.
Question, so, is there limitations, they created this Gen X thing, right?
Yeah.
And now who knows what they're working on, is there a phase out from the EPA to these companies to say, hey, no more, whatever you're thinking, it's gotta stop, period, end of story?
That's what's on the table here for discussion, is what do you do? And I've got some slides to talk some more about that. So let's go to the next slide. So current status in Colorado, which if you read the newspapers, you probably saw some of this, but there's 29 public water systems out of 2,000 in Colorado that showed they were had higher than 4 parts per trillion. So they've got to start working. The city of Brighton, which they talked about in the paper here, which my company is working on that system, building that. Thornton, Commerce City, let's see, did I say it down there? Yeah, so like number 4, Thornton is in the process of selecting an engineer to get started. Number 3 there, South Adams County, we've selected a contractor and we're getting ready to start construction there. Let's see. Fortunately, Denver water system is showing that they're below. That they're not detecting anything. Yeah.
I'm no hydrologist, but it would seem to me like if I have a well, I'm safer than if I'm taking service water. Is that not true?
That's up for grabs. I mean, it's yeah, that's.
But if I'm worried about like refinery runoff and stuff, I mean, surface water.
Right, but like Orange County, which is where Anaheim is, they get most all their water from groundwater in Orange County, and all that groundwater area is contaminated. So Orange County is in the process of suing the chemical company they think caused that for $1 billion, and that's what they're having to spend in all of Orange County to treat the groundwater is $1 billion. Anaheim, that project is about 130 million, just as itself that.
Ron, do you know where we are in Douglas County?
In Centennial and Highlands Ranch, most of your water is bought from Denver Water and is just provided straight from Denver Water to you. So based on the data out there right now, you're probably drinking safe water if you're in Highlands Ranch and in Centennial. But I did some research on that. So some of your water is supplemented by wells, but apparently that hadn't shown up anything yet either. So
Ron, do these evaporate and go into the atmosphere and then come back down in rainwater?
they do come when they go out as emission. They don't evaporate, but as I understand it, they don't evaporate. But there are emissions that come out from manufacturing, and so that does go in the atmosphere, and that does come down as rainwater. And they have detected PFAS in rainwater in places. And one of the early attempts to get rid of this was to incinerate it, but the incineration process was not high enough to break the molecules, so that just put it out in the atmosphere.
Does home filtering system do anything, Rita, or?
You bet. Yep.
That
Yep.
helps?
Yep. There are home filtering systems, and I'll talk about that here in just a minute.
Okay.
So good.
You talked about, Highland Ranch, how about Parker?
No, I didn't. I'm not sure who their water supply. Oh, that would be Parker. Parker, at least one of their treatment plants, they're using reverse osmosis for other reasons, but that would then capture the PFAS. So Parker is probably okay also.
Well, Castle used to be a little town, now it's as big as Highlands Ranch and Parker.
And let's see, I think I've got a picture, Castle Rock, they're doing some treatment. I guess they had some issues already and they knew about it and have built. So they're ahead of the game.
Yeah, they had issues years ago when I lived down there. I lived on top of a hill. I get in the shower and I get all lathered up and all of a sudden the water will quit. So they've had issues for a long time down there.
So number 6 there, Colorado is receiving about 41 million from EPA to start doing testing and some cleanup, but that is really a drop in the bucket. And then the big item here is Colorado Assembly, and they were talking about it in the paper also, is they're looking at banning the sale of consumer products that contain forever chemicals. So that's a pretty big deal.
Sure
I mean,
is.
that your favorite products, whatever that might be, aren't going to be available. And if you're on the other side selling this, all of a sudden now you're not going to be allowed to sell this. So it's now in Europe, the European Union, they're looking at doing that also, banning all of that, the sale of anything that's got PFAS in it.
So effectively shut down the REI here.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's.
Well, I mean, yeah. They're in the, you sent me that podcast that on the outdoor industry side, I mean, there's a lot of pressure on the companies that are making the raincoats and all that to try and find alternate materials. And some of those alternate materials may not be as good as the PFAS for your raincoats, so.
In terms of effective.
Yeah.
Well, that was,
And I think I was reading an article where they'd come up with a different material, but like they recommended, each time after you used it, that you put it in the dryer, your raincoat in the dryer and I guess the heat of the dryer helped reactivate the material that whatever they had come up with. So I mean, there's a lot of creativity and you know, experimentation going on, trying to find alternate products. So in talking with Robert Billett, some of his comments, you know, and is instead of the C8, you know, these companies are now making C6 and C4s, C9s, C10s, but they're all part of the PFAS family, and you know, the potential is there. So his comment is the companies is who should be paying for these studies on the dangers of PFAS. And the only way to establish policies regulating PFAS is to prove that they're toxic. So, you know, based on our regulations and our laws, if you're a chemical, you're innocent until proven guilty. You know, so you're able to put a chemical out there, and until somebody proves it's bad, you're allowed to put it out there. So his comment is without these studies, the companies producing PFAS can continue to claim that there's no proof that their chemicals are toxic. So right now the chemical companies, this is his opinion, are sitting back saying there's no evidence, which the public interprets as meaning studies have been done and it's been proven safe. But no evidence means we're not doing the studies. So what can you do? So some recommendations are to ditch your non-stick cookware. Now, granted, you know, the stickware is you know, it's as I understand it, it's when you're heating, you know, when you're frying something at a high temperature that you're getting some off-gassing of PFAS. So if you want to continue to use your non-stick, cook it at lower temperatures. Nadine?
Who does like those green frying pans?
You know, I haven't looked into that.
Well, I mean, the labels on them swore that they didn't have PFAS or anything.
Well, you got to read carefully. It might say that it doesn't include PFOA or PFAS, but it might include the Gen X. So I
Get rid of those.
I know. I didn't really realize that until I started preparing for this talk.
May I suggest an alternate and ancient technology of using cast iron, which over a period of time creates a non-stick surface, and you can enhance that if you want to. Yes, the pans are heavy, but honestly, they last forever. I have some that long time around.
Yep.
I used to have a pet parrot many years ago, and they always tell parrot owners, do not use non-stick cookware in your home, because those vapors it's fatal to your bird. Because they have a very sensitive.
Yeah. I was reading that. Yep. So you need to start popping your own popcorn and not in the bag. And I've got a couple of boxes that I need to throw away in my house. So, and then you need to bring your own containers, you know, because most of the wrappers of the major fast food chains are coated in PFAS.
Plastic containers.
Not plastic. Go with glass or stainless steel.
Yeah.
And then your favorite dental floss, you know, is Teflon, and it's got PFAS. So I recommend you go and Google and look for PFAS-free before you go. I've found some floss that's made from bamboo and impregnated with activated carbon. So you can see what's out there. And then avoid, you know, the stain-resistant coatings on your carpets and your sofas when you're buying your sofas and stuff. You know, it's nice having that on there, but now you're just sitting in PFAS.
You say we should remain homeless?
I have to go back to the 1890s.
So number 6 is read the labels. You know, avoid products, cosmetics, varnishes, household items that say they've got PTFE or fluor or perfluor. in the ingredients. So those are some of your key words. And for your sports clothing, is demanding non-PFAS.
In that podcast that I sent you, one of the companies that was working on this really significantly is Keen, Keene, and they were talking about, there are in one of their boots, there are 200 different, items that go into the boot. And that means 200 different companies that you're having to talk to get, to make a PFAS-free boot. And some of the things that are in there don't need to be water. Why do the shoelaces need to be water repellent? Why do things that aren't in contact, that are actually supposed to, so there are all of these things that are in there that have this in there, and some of them don't even need to be in there. So
Yep.
this was, because this was an outdoor-oriented podcast, so I was fascinated by this stuff. So I'm like,
this one is, number 8 is mine there, and that's supporting your water utility. That's something for you to think about, a couple of data points for you to think about, is the operating cost of the municipal water treatment plants across the entire United States is $45 billion a year. That's the cost of operating. And just another data point for you is the bottled water industry in 2022, their sales was $46 billion. The water company, they put a pipe up to your house, they're pumping your water in, for drinking, if you drink it, for showering, for flushing the commode, your lawn. The average person, the average household uses 100 gallons per day per person in that household. So they're providing you potentially, a couple of 100 gallons a day of water for the rates that you're paying. So when your rates go up, be sensitive to you're helping yourself with better, reliable water rather than continuing to keep them under your thumb and making them do more for less. And those are my clients. Those are the people I work for. I see hardworking, conscientious, diligent people that are running those facilities and trying to give everybody good, clean water. Yeah, Kurt?
So if your water bill is $100 a month, I don't know this, I'm on well water, I'm staying here for that, because I think I'm safer. But if what do they project the cost of water going up to the average consumer once you install the facilities?
Well, I guess if we're successful in making the people that cause this problem pay for it, then that cost is going to be transferred to those companies and their shareholders, their stockholders, so it's a big, if you're able to, if lawsuits are successful, then these companies are going to be making less profit. And if you've got a 401k in stock, then you're going to be making less,
that was the theory, and I hear you, but that was the theory with asbestos, and they just all filed for bankruptcy. Right, so that's the other side of it.
Yep.
I don't think the plant's doing that good these days, by the way.
Yep. And I can't prove this, but what I'm reading is that was part of why they spun off some other companies too.
Moors and all the others.
It's in a way the enemy is us. It's a whole community kind of deal, and we're.
But if the groundwater is contaminated, how safe are wells? If groundwater is contaminated, how safe are wells?
The wells are very individualistic, just depending on where you're getting your groundwater from and how close are you to the nearest airport or military base, type of thing.
The other thing is you need to pay for your own testing of your water. You do not know unless you test.
Right,
Water permeates through the ground, and whatever is in that ground, it takes with it right down to your water
Yeah.
supply. I grew up on well water.
yeah. And unfortunately, testing PFAS is very expensive. I mean, you're looking at probably $400 to do a PFAS test. So it's,
And you look at Montana, which only had 2 sites, with red dots, but how many water treatment systems are there in the state of Montana? Most of those are ranchers, they're on wells.
yeah, yeah.
And lots of silos, mostly silos throughout the area that made it.
Yep. So you mentioned home treatment. There are treatment facilities out there that remove PFAS. And I went to Consumer Report site and the Environmental Working Group site, and they both have products that, you know, that they rate on how well they remove PFAS. And they're from everything from pitchers to systems that you hook onto your faucet to systems you put into your sink, you know, and whole house systems. So if you know, if you've got some contamination or think you do, there are some options out there for kind of for the short term. And then this one is just strictly Rod Pope's recommendation, and that's live healthy to support your immune system. You know, what you eat and getting good night's sleep and exercising and reduce stress is kind of my philosophy of helping your body fight off a multitude of things.
Well, you just gave us all this stress.
Yeah.
You chose.
The enemy is us.
So the next slide is just open up for questions.
This is not in your purview exactly, since you're talking about water supply for human beings.
Mm-hmm.
But does anybody really know what the pollution in the oceans are?
I mean, it's getting worse and worse. You know, there are huge islands of plastic that we're accumulating out there. I mean, unfortunately, that's our dumping ground. Hopefully we've stopped, but there are a lot of municipalities for a long time that barged their solid waste or garbage and dumped it in the ocean, you know, just on huge barges. So, you know, the ocean's getting warmer from what I read, and I'm afraid it's probably getting more polluted. And then we're eating those fish that are eating that pollution, so.
Well, it's not just fish, it's not just us. There's a lot of living things on this planet that can be contaminated and affected.
Yeah.
It's not just us. But we, of course, look at us because we care about us.
Yeah, yeah. Well, my understanding is you can't find a fish that doesn't have mercury in it. It's just how much mercury is in the fish. So, and that's probably the same thing with PFAS. I'm totally speculating, but there's probably PFAS in all the fish. It's just how much is in the fish.
This was great. Well done, fabulous.
Andy?
Is that movie Dark Waters, is that the one that depicted it?
Well, go to the next slide. There's 3 other sources of publications. There is The Devil We Know, which is a documentary, and that's on YouTube. You can just Google that and pop right up. That's about an hour and a half long documentary. And then Dark Waters is actually a movie that was about the lawsuit there in Parkersburg, West Virginia. And then Robert Billett just, a couple of years ago actually, wrote a book called Exposure. So those are some more places you can go and read more about what's happened.
One of the things that was also in that podcast, it relates to ocean and all this other stuff, is that Keene went through and they've done as much as they can do. And they test everything, all of the stuff that's coming in from their suppliers and all that, they made all these demands. And all of their suppliers said, everything's clean, and then they find it on a box. you know, they're on a box that have nothing to do with anything, you know, it's just, it's out there in the air or in the waters, and as much as we try to do, it somehow it gets on a box that touches stuff. You know, so even the testing is.
Oh, and yeah, collecting the samples for measuring PFAS is very sensitive techniques so that you know, the gloves you're wearing and you know, everything else, that you don't end up contaminating the sample while you're doing the test and getting a false positive. So, yes.
Was this the problem at Camp Lejeune?
I don't know what the contaminant was there in the well water. That's a good question. I need to go look and see.
When I was a boy in the chemical industry, we were always concerned with chlorine hydrocarbons, which are less stable, much more apt to get your bloodstream. Benzene, which is it absorbs right to you.
Yep.
And so I'm not minimizing this at all, but I'm wondering how is this just the new thing to worry about, or are we gonna forget about the other things?
Oh, that's a real good point. I mean, there's it's like, you know, if I remember my chemistry right, benzene is what you use to extract the caffeine out of coffee to make it
And it's
decaffeinated.
the biggest, I used to make detergents, that's what we did for Conoco, and in your Tide and the Whisk and all that, it's the major component in it, but it stays stable and they created a molecule that is biodegradable.
Yep.
But it's still, benzene is half the molecule.
It's probably been 20 years ago, but there was a study that I was reading about risk factors, and you know, how many people, what's the risk of dying from smoking, from different chemicals, and the number one highest risk for dying early is being poor. You drive on bald tires because they need to be replaced. You're driving with a cracked windshield. So that far exceeded, candidly, all these chemicals that we're concerned about.
And I'm concerned about this one, but I know there's a bunch of other really nasty stuff out there.
Yeah.
That is an area, PVC pipes, insulation, all over the place.
Yep.
There are about 30 bills right now in Colorado Assembly about air quality, water quality, and none of them is about this.
Okay.
But the other ones, a lot of it is about paper mining, a lot of it is water, like the wetlands, because of the Supreme Court ruling about things that aren't always wet being considered waterways and therefore don't need to be protected. In Colorado, they're trying to say, well, we have things that we know regularly are wet, dry, but we still want to protect those. So there, if you just Google Colorado legislative session 2024, and then there's an environmental icon, and you go there. And a lot of them right now are sitting in appropriations, waiting to see whether they'll be funded, and if there is support for them, but whether they'll be funded. So you can certainly influence whether or not they get funded by making a telephone call or sending an email.
I go back to your graph of, what gives you premature death and start them. You gotta look at all of them, but you wanna work on them.
Sure.
The 80-20 rule, right?
Right. Yep. That's. Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you all for having me.
We'll be able to get this online then too.
Yeah.